Good afternoon. My focus is basically to look at the impact on businesses for our clients, for potential clients, and in general, I'm always been fascinated how you have impact on organizations, individuals, and make a change. So there are a couple of examples of how you can have impact. This is the CEO of Ruter. Ruter is the public transport company in Oslo. And he publicly stated that he and his company will want to stop irritating you as a customer. He's not suicidal. He actually believes this. It's part of a customer strategy. So we worked with Ruter about a year and a half ago on a customer strategy. And all the things we came up with, the work we did internally with the customers, what we did in other countries, because we're not only in Oslo looking at public transport. In all those places, there's a very fundamental thing that is wrong with public transport. It's an irritating business. So if you start off with saying, let's stop doing the irritating things as a foundation and build from there, you have a platform to do great things. So Ruter, like all the public transport and public service companies, actually has the situation of a bad reputation. But by making this statement, they become credible. They have put a platform underneath the things they want to do. We will stop irritating you. That has impact. Another Norwegian example is from a bank and also an insurance company. And from those of you from banking or insurance, you know that even though the brand might actually be the same, the systems, the processes, the business, the thinking, and everything else is not. So when a company wants to have a single brand and wants to combine insurance and banking, especially for a new target audience, namely young people, that takes quite a bit of taking care of things. So on the service level, it makes sense. This insurance is targeted at young people who don't take insurance because you're going to live forever and you don't need insurance. I'm a bit older, I'm not going to live forever, I need insurance. So for me, it's more natural to have insurance. But for young people, when you combine getting your first credit card or your first payment or those kind of responsibilities on a card with an insurance card, then it makes sense. And the uptake of that is tremendous. I think they did about 3 times as much business for the target audience in the first year. So that's really cool and really good on the service level. But just imagine what happened underneath the surface. The third one is another project, and it has to deal with people with cancer or some kind of disease which has a mortality rate to it. And it's a very difficult conversation to have as a doctor, a nurse, with these patients. Because when these people are diagnosed, you want to have a conversation about what you should do in regaining your health, or you should do about your lifestyle, or all those kind of things. But people's minds are in 2 other areas. They're in their life. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family? Who's going to take care of them? Or it's in the system. What's going to happen to my job? What happens to my pension? Will I be able to pay my mortgage? So by separating those 3 concerns and actually finding a time and place to talk about these things with these people, it becomes very clear to both the people who have to support them and the people who receive the support what the main conversation is to be had. The reason why I'm showing this here is this is how the Norwegian health sector basically communicates on its website. And it's just one of the small deliverables of a larger project. So I'm not a service designer. I come from strategy, I come from business. And I wear a suit. Not always, but on this special occasion, I think I should wear a suit. So let me tell you about my colleagues. A week ago, we had dinner in Oslo, and I asked my Norwegian colleagues and my British colleague, partner who was there, just what were the instances where you or we had impact on organizations in ways we didn't expect or didn't see coming. So these are just some of the things they've experienced. And the first one was the client in a workshop halfway through the first day, just grabbed the sketch that was on the table, ran out, and didn't reappear till the next day, which is not common. The reason why it's actually a very good thing is at that point, halfway through, a half day into the session, which is supposed to take a couple of days, plus a full design session and all of that kind of thing, the value was created. It all came together in a way, in a simple sketch that made a difference to this business person who saw, that's it. This is the thing I need to communicate internally. This is the thing I can take to the people in my organization to move it forward. All the other stuff is nice, but this is impact. The second one, two of my Norwegian colleagues walked out of a workshop completely depressed. It happened to be winter as well. Winter in Norway is not the best time to be in Oslo, but that had nothing to do with it. So for 2 years, they thought they'd done a really poor job with this particular client, until they were invited back, surprise, and were told that that workshop had been the beginning of a total transformation of this organization. That workshop, which was extremely painful, put people in a room around a single idea with the support and the creativity of service design, facing up to some of the challenges that therefore were unspeakable. So it was a painful session. And no, it didn't deliver a fully fleshed designed service, but it was the beginning for this organization to move forward. The third example actually happened yesterday. We invited a client with 2 different locations in Europe, and for a joint workshop, basically to set all of the work we wanted to do with them, set it up. And there was a tremendous row in the room. Now, we're not very sensitive souls at Livework, but it took some volume. And the good thing about that volume was it showed the passion and also the commitment to get some of the stuff that had been hidden underneath the surface, get it on the table. Unfortunately, they chose our location to do that, but it needed to be done. That is impact. We haven't even started with this client, but we have already started. And then the final one is that the blueprint that keeps getting stolen. So this is a project that was delivered and it had a blueprint. And what I understand, it's a big one and it's supposed to be on a wall. And it keeps disappearing from the wall of this particular person. And then it reappears and disappears. Which says 2 things. He should make photocopies. But more importantly, it's seen as a very important thing within this organization because nobody's telling them go and steal that blueprint. It is something that people truly value in the organization. It does something for them. So when we talk about business impact, and some of the other presenters, we kind of try and make it very big. But business impact doesn't always have to be. So my personal journey towards service design is about 12, 13 years. Now, I'll skip the first years. I'll just jump into 2003. And this is, for those of you, I know there's some Belgians and some Dutch people here, this is unemployment. The top end is employment in the Netherlands, and the bottom gray part is basically when you are unemployed and you have social security, social services. The middle piece is when you're in jeopardy. So basically there are services to prevent you from becoming unemployed. Now, this is 2003, so the numbers don't really add up again. But the point is, those services are set up to help people with a certain level of risk, the risk of losing the job or having lost the job. And that's called the intervention level. That's the red arrow there. So we're doing this project, and we basically said, as a project organization said, why intervene in people's security of job at the moment when they lose the job or when they have to register for unemployment? That's too late. That is, those people have been anxious, have been worried, and had the potential, as an agency, you had the potential to help them a lot earlier, a lot sooner, and make a difference. And the simple answer is, no, that's too expensive. That means we have to use our main channel, which is physical locations, to help those people. And we said, no, it's 2003, we have the internet. And they said, the what? So we had to explain the internet, and especially what the internet could do for this organization. And no, we were very ambitious. We looked 3 years ahead. Basically, these are the intervention levels. What we explained was that if you intervene earlier using cross-channel and using the internet and using the call center in the right combinations, you can shift basically the burden on some parts of the organization towards the other. And the good thing about it is people actually want that. Now, so that was the easy thing. There was a business case behind it, the numbers stacked up, and there are only 16.5 million Dutch people, but if you still apply that multiplier, you know the numbers can stack up. So we had a case. And then the next question was, okay, so let's build the system, because that's the solution. When you have a problem, you build a system. This is government after all, the same in banking and insurance, any large bureaucracy. You have a problem, you design a system, you build a system, and then you find out your system actually doesn't solve anything. But that's for later. Anyway, the first part is you design a system. And we said, no, what is the problem and what is the service that has to be designed? So this is 2002, 2003. And the issue there was, as an organization, we knew we have to communicate differently. We have to engage different parts of the organization, otherwise they'll build another system. So we went out looking for something around experience and services and design and creativity, and we couldn't find anything. We talked to agencies, consultancies, research companies. It's 2003, and there was no service design to be found. So we found a digital agency. After a long search, they tried to come up with a design of the service that would elevate the intervention levels. They failed, they got fired, a number of other people got pretty upset, and it was basically a big fiasco. Or was it? So this picture, there's actually another one, but I'm not allowed to show you. That picture, even though how clunky it looks and doesn't make sense to you at all, that picture survived, and I think it still survives up until now. It's actually driven some of the channel innovations that had to happen around unemployment in the Netherlands. Not this particular picture. I mean, a lot of people picked it up and they worked through it. The problem was it was never translated into a service. It always became this, it always stayed this abstract thing about arrows and intervention levels and this and that. So they came a long way. And I actually spoke to my client of 2003 a couple of months ago, and he said, yeah, we're about phase 1 of what you developed then about 10 years ago. So it's still around. The next time this is 2009, and there have been some other projects in between, where I knew there was a need for me as a business or strategy consultant to make impact on the organization. I can produce the numbers, I can produce the stories, I can produce the concepts, I can have teams coming in to make it all very rational, but it won't fly because it's not about the numbers. It's not about being rational. There's something else needed. So this time around, in 2009, we actively looked around for what is needed, and we stumbled upon Adaptive Path. By pure coincidence. And they came over, worked with us for a couple of days, said, no, thank you very much, we're not able to do this, and we actually found what we were looking for. We found what was called service design. No clue what it was, what it did, who were the people in it, but a bit of Googling and you get the known suspects. So I've met around that time IDEO, Frog, Engine, Livework, and all those other companies. So as a business and as a business consultant, I knew what I was looking for, and I found it in service design. And we took on the project. This is a cross-channel project. This is the most abstract level I can show it. It's very simple. You just change channels. Nothing special. I can't give you the exact number, but take a number in your head for this particular company. It's a telco company. And I guess you need to multiply it a couple of times to guess how expensive that is to make some of this happen. The numbers are really large to do it in this organization. So it's not that easy. So what happens if you take the service design and give it some steroids, or in other words, you combine it with business people, business thinking, basically the capabilities that exist either in the organization or can be hired in. Because you have the creativity, you're the niceness. Remember, you're the nice people. When I come in, people scare. I scare people. You come in with a smile. When I smile, people get really worried. So it is the combination of those two things that make a difference. My smile and your smile. So this is a telco, and this is not for any particular country. We've tested this in multiple countries, continents. This is what happens when you actually buy a phone, or a contract for a phone. This is not for debit, this is for when you have a contract. And it's basically the experience, and it's very universal, of buying or changing a phone. It is a positive experience the moment you buy it, and everything after that is kind of downhill. That can happen in a matter of minutes, seconds, hours, days, or weeks. Then you have the three negatives. The first negative is you have to change phones. Now, some people enjoy changing phones. You're not normal. The second thing you have to change your service. You have to swap your things over. No, that's always an annoyance. And the third thing is when you found out that the summer deal that was given to you is only for the summer, and it's now winter, so you pay double. So that's where you get the bill, and the bill doesn't conform to what you were expecting to pay over winter. So those are the three negatives. The interesting thing from a business perspective is those three negatives actually show up in the numbers as complaints, issues, irritations. Those are things where actually the customers reach out and say, this is not what I expected, I don't like this, I don't agree with this. And for every one of those complaints, there's a factor of 8 to 13 who don't. So those complaints are preventable. Most of those issues that you see here, the three negatives, can be simply picked up by taking a bit more time to educate, help, or support the customers at the moment when they buy or change their service. And we've actually done projects around that. So there are two sides to this diagram. It's the smiley faces and the unhappy faces. You have the experience of the customers on top, and what an organization needs to do to support them and keeping them happy or preventing them to be unhappy. Now, there's always talk about this wow moment and how can we invest in this fantastic experience. The problem with the fantastic experience, usually around the sales moment there, is you better back it up with something substantial after that, because that moment is pretty fleeting. And what remains are the negatives there. And if you really do it wrong, when the moment comes when somebody says, I can change, switch, guess what they'll do? They'll change. That happens in energy, happens in mobile services, happens in a lot of the larger services. So let's zoom into one particular scenario, because if you help customers early on, I just said, you can actually prevent a lot of those problems and irritations. So let's zoom in. You want to actually have those customers, help them get their device and their product and service up and running really quickly. And we've piloted this. And so you plug in one phone, another one, it swaps over, you explain about changing the email, blah, 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 blah. 3 minutes. Fantastic. Even other people from other providers came over because they wanted that service, willing to pay for it. So the top end is really interesting, and it makes sense. Let me ask the question, let's not assume. Does this top end, does it make sense to you? When you look at that, does it make sense to support customers when they actually get a new service that they find hard to understand? No? Yes? Somewhat. Okay. Well, it made sense to a lot of people because they came. Now, the interesting thing here is the mapping to the organization. What does it do to the processes, policies, and systems? So the first step, if you want people to buy a phone online and then come to the shop, they have to be able to choose the phone. Unfortunately for this organization, their systems didn't have that information aggregated. So they knew what happened in each one of the shops. They couldn't aggregate it up. They could, cost a couple of million, lots of zeros, and it would take 2 years. Because the problem is, you want to do something different, go to IT, deliver this new system, this service. But if you take the customer's perspective, saying, what does the customer want? The customer just wants to be able to pick a phone and pick it up the next day. And they can already do that online, and they can have it delivered at home. So why is it so complicated to actually change that particular process, which has been signed off, been used for the last 8 years, and has no complaints? Why not use that exact process for something like this, which you can implement in a couple of weeks, and certainly doesn't cost the millions that the alternative costs? And a simple reason why that's not considered, or was not considered, is because the general thinking, problem needs to be solved with system. Instead of problem needs to be solved, let's find out what the customer needs. Because of the time, I'll skip the other two examples. I'll move on very quickly. This is what we call a heat map. This is based on public transport. This is mapping the experience of customers, this is in the UK, based on survey data of how they experience their journeys, how they experience their public transport, from the stations to the actual trams, trains, metros, and so on. What it's mapped to is 2-hour life cycle. And the heat map fundamentally says these are the opportunities to improve the experience for the customers. If you know that, then you can design the service against those particular hotspots. So this design is for ticket information centers in London, basically support people coming in from London and what they need, and when they enter London, and what they need in terms of information and service in general. So the interesting bit is that explains the way people experience it on the top level. The pictures below, since this is a transport company, it's TfL, you have to think about physicality, what it looks like on the walls and what it looks like on the screen. So that's what we translated into, and the Mayor of London loved it, and actually was one of those things that he signed off in saying, this moves us forward, it makes a difference. The heat maps give the validation, the pictures on top give the explanation, and the images and the descriptions underneath give basically the connection to the organization of how and what they should be doing. I'll skip to the final slide, since I've run out of time. Those are the 6 things. I'll keep it really short. So when you join me as a business designer, that's basically the title we use internally. So business design and service design, keep it really simple for the organization. It's not solving the massive problems. Solve the obvious ones. Those make an impact. The bigger ones, if you can't tackle the small ones or the obvious ones, you won't be able to tackle the big ones. Understand before design. I cannot really explain what this one does, but fundamentally, if you design the solution without understanding what it's supposed to do, then you have another issue. This is for a queue system in a hospital in Norway. Test with customers. This is in Brazil. This is very quick prototyping involving lots of people in the street. And the telephone operator said, people won't like this service. They won't use it. Well, they actually did. And the main reason why they liked this is because they hated the telco companies. And this gave them an opportunity to grab and pay and get rid of those telco bills there and then. Give the organization time. This is an energy company in Norway. So we redesigned their bill about 7 years ago, and took 2 years. And they came back a couple of months ago and said, now we're ready for phase 2. So they needed about 5 years to move on to the next phase. You could push and design and force all these alternative nice scenarios, but they were not ready. And the final one is have fun with the clients, because remember, you guys are the fun people, the nice people. Let me close with this quote. This is a project in Thailand we did. That is the advisor to the Prime Minister of Thailand. And basically, I'll read it out loud. Engineering and architecture are useless without service design. There's no point investing in the pure physicality and technicality of any public service infrastructure if the service aspect is not well thought through and well planned. So this is actually a statement of a very smart client of ours. So my final thought to all of you is, give your clients what they need. Give it in a shape and form they can use. It might be tiny, might be big, but give it to them, support them, and help them move forward. Thank you very much.